My best friend and I went on a road trip to reconnect, but we never expected to uncover the secret that would change everything about our past. I have been best friends with Jenna since middle school. We did everything together: sleepovers, classes, weekend mall trips. She was my ride or die. But life, as it often does, slowly began to pull us in different directions. By the time we reached our mid-20s, we were living in different cities, working different jobs, and barely talking as much as we used to. I could feel the distance between us, and it terrified me. So when Jenna texted me out of the blue one afternoon, asking if I wanted to go on a spontaneous road trip to reconnect, I jumped at the chance. It sounded like exactly what we needed. We would pack up a few bags, hit the road for a few days, and just talk like we used to. Our plan was simple. We would drive through some of the small, picturesque towns that dotted the countryside, stopping at any interesting sights along the way. The first few hours were perfect. We played music, reminisced about our high school days, and laughed until our sides hurt. It felt like old times. But on the second day of the trip, something strange happened. We were driving through a sleepy little town that I had never heard of before. It was one of those blink and you miss it places with a single gas station and a diner that looked like it had not been updated since the 1950s. Jenna pulled into the parking lot of the diner, insisting we stop for a late lunch. It felt like a perfectly normal suggestion, so I agreed. We walked in, sat at a booth near the window, and ordered burgers and fries. As we waited for our food, I noticed Jenna seemed distracted. Her eyes kept darting toward the diner's entrance, like she was expecting someone. When I asked her if everything was okay, she brushed it off with a tight smile, but I could tell something was off. That was when things got weird. A middle-aged man walked into the diner, wearing a faded flannel shirt and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Jenna stiffened the moment he entered, and her hand gripped her coffee cup so tightly I thought it might shatter. The man scanned the diner, his gaze finally landing on us. He smiled a slow, almost knowing smile and made his way over to our booth. "Jenna," he said, his voice low and rough. I looked at Jenna, confused. She knew this guy. Jenna's face went pale, and she muttered something under her breath that I could not make out. The man slid into the booth across from us, like he was an old friend, but I could see the tension in Jenna's posture. This was not a friendly reunion. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice shaking. The man smirked. "You know why I'm here." I had no idea what was happening, but it was clear that this man and Jenna had some kind of history. I felt like an outsider in my own friendship. Before I could ask any questions, Jenna abruptly stood up and grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." We practically ran out of the diner, leaving our uneaten food behind. I was bombarding Jenna with questions as we got back into the car, but she remained silent, her face a mask of fear. It was not until we were miles down the road that she finally spoke. "There is something I need to tell you," she began, her voice barely audible. "I did not bring you on this road trip to reconnect." I stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. "Do you remember that summer, back when we were 14, when we spent 2 weeks at that camp in the mountains?" I frowned, trying to recall the details. It was so long ago, but I vaguely remembered the camp. We had both gone, excited to spend time in nature, but something had happened during those 2 weeks, something Jenna had never talked about. She had left early, without much of an explanation, and I had not pressed her on it at the time. "I remember you left early," I said slowly. You said it was a family emergency. Jenna let out a humorless laugh. That is what I told you. But the truth is, something happened to me at that camp. Something I have been trying to forget ever since. My heart sank. Jenna, what happened? She glanced at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and guilt. I met someone at that camp. Someone who changed everything. And that man back at the diner, he was involved. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean, involved? She took a shaky breath. He was one of the counselors at the camp. At first, he seemed nice, friendly, even. But then he started singling me out. He would find ways to talk to me when no one else was around. At the time, I thought it was innocent, but then he started saying things that made me uncomfortable. I stared at her, horrified. Jenna, why did you never tell me this? She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I was scared. I did not know how to talk about it. And then, one night, he asked me to meet him by the lake, said he wanted to show me something. I went, but when I got there, he wasn't alone. There were others, people I did not recognize. They threatened me, told me that if I ever spoke about what I saw, they would come after me. My stomach churned. What did you see? Jenna swallowed hard. They were doing something illegal, something I still do not fully understand. But it involved money, and a lot of it. I was just a kid, but I knew it was dangerous. I ran away that night, and my parents picked me up the next morning. I never told anyone, not even them, what really happened. I was stunned into silence. All these years, Jenna had been carrying this dark secret, and I had never known. But there was still one thing I did not understand. Why are you telling me this now? Why did you bring me here? I asked. Jenna wiped away a tear. Because I thought I could fix it. I thought if I came back here, I could face him, make him leave me alone for good. But I was wrong. He is still involved with those people, and now he knows that I am back. I felt a surge of fear. Jenna, we need to go to the police. She shook her head. It is too late. They have too much power. They will find us, no matter where we go. I could not believe what I was hearing. We were in over our heads, and I had no idea how to help her. But one thing was clear: we needed to get out of this town, fast. As we drove away, my mind raced with questions. Who were these people? How deep did this conspiracy go? And most importantly, how were we going to get out of this alive? The road stretched out ahead of us, but I had a sinking feeling that no matter how far we drove, the past was about to catch up with us. The miles passed in a blur, the small towns and rolling fields dissolving into the background as we sped down the highway. My mind was swirling with everything Jenna had just revealed. I could not believe she had carried this weight for so many years, this dark secret that had suddenly resurfaced, threatening to pull us both under. Jenna was gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles had gone white. The silence between us was thick with fear and uncertainty. Every car that passed, every turn in the road felt like a potential threat. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting that man from the diner to appear behind us, chasing us down. What are we going to do? I finally asked, breaking the tense quiet. Jenna glanced over at me, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion and terror. I do not know, she whispered. I thought coming back would give me closure, but now I have made everything worse. Just then, Jenna's phone buzzed on the dashboard. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up, her face paling as she read the message. Without a word, she handed the phone to me. The message was from an unknown number: "You can run, but you cannot hide. We are watching." My heart raced as I read the words, panic setting in. "Jenna, we have to call the police. This is serious." She shook her head, eyes wide with fear. "They will not protect us. They are everywhere." Before I could argue, the phone buzzed again. Another message. This one simply read, "Look up." Confused, I glanced out the window and froze. A black SUV had appeared behind us, speeding up to close the distance. The headlights bore down on us like a predator stalking its prey. "They are here," I whispered, the words barely audible over the pounding of my heart. Jenna slammed her foot on the gas, the car lurching forward as we hurtled down the highway. The SUV matched our speed, staying close, its intentions clear. I could feel the panic rising in my chest as the reality of the situation set in. We were being hunted. "Jenna, what do we do?" I asked, my voice shaking. Her eyes darted from the road to the rearview mirror. "We keep driving. We cannot stop." But deep down, I knew that we could not outrun them forever. As the SUV drew closer, I realized that we were trapped, caught in a web of danger and secrets that we did not fully understand. Suddenly, the SUV swerved to the side, pulling up next to us. I could see the silhouette of the driver through the tinted windows, and a chill ran down my spine. They were not trying to pass us, they were forcing us off the road. "Hold on!" Jenna shouted as she yanked the steering wheel, trying to swerve out of their way. But it was too late. With a sickening crunch, the SUV slammed into the side of our car, sending us spinning out of control. The world became a blur of screeching tires, shattered glass, and the deafening sound of metal on metal. My body lurched violently as the car skidded across the highway and into the ditch. When the car finally came to a stop, everything was eerily silent. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air, and I could hear the faint sound of Jenna's ragged breathing beside me. "Are you okay?" Jenna groaned in pain, but she nodded weakly. "I think so," she whispered. But before we could even begin to process what had just happened, the SUV came to a stop a few yards away. The doors opened, and two men stepped out, their faces obscured by the shadows of the night. "We need to run," I said urgently, my pulse racing. Jenna tried to move, but she winced, clutching her side. "I cannot. My leg. I think it is broken." Panic surged through me as the men began to approach, their footsteps slow and deliberate. I glanced at Jenna, my mind racing. I could not leave her behind, but I also knew that staying here meant certain doom. With trembling hands, I grabbed Jenna's arm, trying to help her stand. But the pain was too much for her to bear, and she collapsed back into the seat, tears of frustration streaming down her face. "Go," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You need to go. Save yourself." I shook my head, my throat tight with emotion. "I am not leaving you." But before I could say anything more, the men reached the car. One of them leaned down, his face now fully visible in the dim light. It was the man from the diner. "You should have stayed away, Jenna," he said, his voice cold and detached. "But now it is too late." As the second man reached into his coat, I braced myself, heart pounding, unsure of what was coming next. But then, the unexpected happened. A flash of light appeared in the distance, followed by the sound of approaching sirens. The men exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. "We will be seeing you soon," the diner man said before they turned and hurried back to the SUV. Within moments, they were gone, disappearing into the night just as quickly as they had arrived. The sirens grew louder, and soon a police car pulled up beside us. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As the officers helped us out of the wrecked car and began asking questions, I realized something terrifying: this was not over. Jenna's past had caught up with her, and now, it was pulling me in too. As we sat there, shaken and bruised, I could not help but wonder how much deeper this rabbit hole went and whether we would ever truly be free from the shadows that haunted us.